Okay, so today we're going to go deep on something pretty big happening around the world.
Yeah.
The fast-growing middle classes in India, Vietnam, and Africa, and all the buying power they're bringing, to the table.
Right.
We've got some interesting research here that really looks into like the economic trends and how people are spending their money in these places.
Mm-hmm.
Our goal today is to like cut through all the noise and figure out what's really important and what it all means for how the world's economy is going to grow in the future.
Exactly.
So if you're curious about the next big economic powerhouses, like this deep dive is for you.
Yeah, for sure. This is a story with a lot of momentum, and what really stands out is just how big and how fast this change is happening.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's not just like small markets popping up. This is a like total reshaping of who the global consumers are.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's jump right into India.
Okay.
The numbers there are just mind-blowing. So in 2025, their GDP is expected to grow by a solid 6.6%.
Wow.
And what's driving that? A lot of it is consumption. Along with the strong manufacturing sector, they've got this PLI scheme, this government thing. It stands for Production-Linked Incentive.
Oh, okay.
Basically, it's meant to boost domestic manufacturing. And it seems to be adding around 8% to the growth. And then there's the booming service industry, too.
Right.
But the really massive thing happening is the surge in the middle class.
Yeah, that's right. By 2025, projections show a crazy 583 million Indians will be considered middle class.
That's a lot of people.
It is. That's like 41% of their whole population. And their impact on the economy is huge, too. They're driving about 65% of all the spending within India.
Yeah. To put that into context, this middle class in India, we're talking about people making between 6 lakh and 36 lakh rupees per year.
Okay.
Which is roughly like 7,000 to 43,000 US dollars.
Oh,
because you can really see how much spending power they have.
For sure.
But it's not just about how much they're spending, it's also what they're choosing to spend their money on. And that's really interesting.
Yeah, that's a great point. The data shows a big change in how they're budgeting their money now. About 30% of their spending goes towards education, healthcare, and housing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you compare that to 2015, when it was only 18%, you see a clear shift towards things that will benefit them in the long run, things that help them move up in life.
Yeah.
So for you, thinking about like societal values and economic development, this trend shows a more mature consumer base that's really focused on creating a better future for themselves.
That's a great point. And all this growth isn't just happening on its own right.
Yeah.
There are some strong forces pushing it along.
Absolutely.
We're seeing the effects of tax cuts.
Right.
That 12 lakh income exemption is estimated to free up over 1.2 trillion rupees.
Wow.
For people to spend however they want.
Exactly. Having that extra money has a direct impact on what people buy.
Right.
Then there's the government's focus on housing, like the PMAYU program.
Right.
They want to build 12 million new homes by 2026.
Ambitious.
Very ambitious. And that impacts the real estate and construction industries, creates jobs, and just keeps the economy humming along.
And we can't forget about the investment in people.
Mm-hmm.
Skill India 2.0 aims to train 22 million young people for jobs in tech and digital fields by 2027.
That's huge.
It is. If that works out, it'll make that middle class even stronger and give them the skills to thrive in the future economy.
Yeah, these factors are creating a really good environment for new consumer behaviors to emerge.
Yeah, exactly. And the sources we looked at really highlighted some interesting new trends in India.
Oh, like what?
Well, this beyond school trend caught my attention.
How so?
It seems parents in India, especially in big cities, are thinking differently about their kids' education.
Interesting. How so?
Oh, they're spending about 5 to 7% of their budget on activities outside of regular school hours.
Huh. So for you, thinking about the future of education and like after school programs, this is a huge market, and it shows how parents' priorities are changing.
Yeah.
And what kinds of activities are we talking about?
It's really diverse.
Yeah.
It's not just your typical tutoring or test prep.
Right.
There's a big surge in things like chess, Vedic mathematics, public speaking, coding, and robotics, even music, dance, martial arts, and language learning.
Wow. So it's not just about academics anymore.
Yeah, it seems like they're realizing that a regular degree is just the beginning, and that having a wide range of skills is really important for success in the future.
Yeah, makes sense. So for you, thinking about the future workforce, this could give India a competitive edge in more creative and specialized fields.
Exactly. It's like they're trying to give their kids a whole toolbox of skills to handle whatever comes their way in this fast-changing world.
Yeah, I like that analogy.
And then there's the electric vehicle market, specifically two-wheelers.
Okay.
Even though they've made some changes to the subsidies, sales still grew by over 5%. in 2025.
Mm-hmm.
They sold 173,820 units. That's a lot of electric scooters and bikes.
It is. And what's driving that?
Well, competitive pricing is a big factor. Models like Ola's S1X Plus are priced really well at 79,999 rupees.
Okay. That makes them more affordable for a lot more people.
Exactly. And the cost of battery technology is going down too, which helps.
Right.
But what's really interesting is the growth in smaller cities like Coimbatore and Pune. They had almost 19% year-on-year growth in January 2025.
So it's not just the big cities adopting EVs anymore.
Right. It's spreading, which shows that this growing middle class wants transportation that's affordable and also good for the environment.
Yeah, definitely. And then there's this quick commerce thing, which seems to be totally changing how people in cities in India are shopping.
Oh, yeah. That's fascinating.
It is. The sector is growing incredibly fast, something like 75 to 100% year on year.
That's massive.
And it's predicted to hit $5.5 billion by 2025. Right now, metro and tier 1 cities account for about half of all e-commerce sales through these super fast delivery services.
So this could be a sign of a global shift in what customers expect in terms of speed and convenience.
Exactly.
It could change how businesses everywhere think about logistics and delivery.
Absolutely.
The big players here are companies like Blinkit. They have a huge 46% market share.
Wow.
And Zepto. They're all promising delivery times as short as 10 minutes.
That's crazy.
And it's not just groceries. Either electronics are also seeing big month-on-month growth in this quick commerce world.
It's really interesting to see how this is affecting traditional stores in cities.
Yeah, they're seeing a big drop in sales of essential items.
Makes sense. The convenience of quick commerce is a huge draw for people.
Yeah, and we're also seeing the rise of these dark stores.
Oh, yeah, those fulfillment centers that only exist for online orders.
Exactly. And a trend towards more premium products in this market with average order values going up.
So interesting.
But it's not all smooth sailing.
Yeah.
There are challenges like the high cost of getting and keeping customers, which is a big hurdle for these companies.
Yeah, makes sense.
So overall, it's a really dynamic and fast-changing consumer landscape in India.
It sounds like it.
Now let's shift gears and look at another major player in Asia, Vietnam. The growth story there is really compelling too, even though it's not on the same massive scale as India.
Right. What's happening in Vietnam?
Well, the striking thing is how quickly their middle class is growing.
Oh, wow.
Projections say that by 2026, they'll make up 26% of the population.
Okay.
That's up from just 13% in 2023.
So that's millions of new consumers with more money to spend.
Exactly. And it seems like a big chunk of that spending is happening in cities. Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City together account for a whopping 70%.
Yeah, that concentration in cities is something you see in a lot of fast-developing economies.
Right. And Vietnam has its own unique factors driving this growth.
Like what?
Well, one big one is the rise of what they call the experience economy.
Oh, interesting.
Spending on travel and leisure is up an impressive 30% year on year.
Wow. So for you, thinking about global tourism and leisure trends, this shows that Vietnam is a market with a growing appetite for these experiences.
Yeah, it definitely suggests that people there want more leisure activities and are willing to spend more money on experiences rather than just basic necessities.
Makes sense. And is e-commerce a big factor in Vietnam's growth too?
Yeah, just like in India, it's playing a major role.
Where?
Online retail is showing a strong 18% compound annual growth rate, with platforms like Shopee and Lazada leading the way.
So they're the big names there.
Yeah, and behind all of this is a high rate of technology adoption. They have 72% smartphone penetration rate.
That's high.
It is, and that's fueling the growth of fintech solutions like Momo and ZaloPay.
Right. So we're seeing a picture emerge of a tech-savvy and increasingly wealthy urban population in Vietnam, driving consumption in both the digital world and the experience-based sectors.
Yeah, exactly. And now let's turn our attention to Africa.
Right.
Specifically Nigeria, which our sources highlight as a prime example of the rising middle class there.
Okay. Nigeria is an interesting case.
It is. Even with some of the broader economic challenges that Africa can face, Nigeria's GDP growth forecast is strong. They're projecting a 6.8% compound annual growth rate between 2025 and 2027. And they've got a clear ambition to become one of the top 20 global economies by 2030.
That's a big goal.
It is, and the potential size of the middle class in Nigeria is enormous.
How big?
It's estimated to be between 21 and 36% of the population.
Wow.
That's about 174 million people with growing purchasing power, driving demand in sectors like fintech, agritech, and education.
So For you, considering potential growth markets, that's a huge consumer base to keep an eye on.
Absolutely. And what's driving growth in Nigeria has its own unique flavor, reflecting the needs and opportunities in that region. The fintech revolution there is especially remarkable. They're expecting 70% sector growth between 2024 and 2025.
That's amazing.
And there are already over 430 fintech firms operating in the country.
Wow, so people are really embracing digital financial services there.
Yeah, they're using it for financial inclusion and efficiency.
Yeah, that makes sense. And are there any other key areas of growth beyond fintech?
Yeah, agritech and climate-smart farming are also identified as crucial.
That makes sense given how important agriculture is to Nigeria's economy and the global push for sustainability.
Exactly. And the third big factor is education and skills development.
Right. As the middle class grows, so does the demand for better education and the skills to succeed in a modern economy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So looking across these three distinct and dynamic regions, India, Vietnam, and Africa, with Nigeria as a focal point, a really compelling theme emerges.
What's that?
The rise of the consumer class in these markets isn't just a local story. It's changing the whole narrative of global economic growth.
That's a great point. It's the combination of their demographics and strategic policy decisions that's driving this huge transformation.
Exactly.
India's massive middle class is changing how it consumes things in really interesting ways. Vietnam is smart about leveraging its digital and green transitions and attracting tech investment.
Yeah.
And Nigeria's rapidly expanding consumer base is skipping over old models and embracing fintech and innovative approaches in agritech.
It's amazing. And when you look at the combined effect, it's hard to ignore how big this global rebalancing is.
Yeah, how much of an impact are they having?
Well, together, these regions are already responsible for about 20% of global trade growth.
Wow. That's a big chunk of the world's economic momentum.
It is, but it's important to remember that it's not all sunshine and roses.
Right.
Our sources also point out the challenges these regions are facing.
Oh, like what?
Well, India has this job quality paradox.
What's that?
Well, employment is growing, but the quality and security of those jobs can be a concern.
Oh, I see.
Vietnam still relies a lot on exports, which makes them vulnerable to changes in the global economy.
That makes sense.
And in Africa, especially in a big and diverse country like Nigeria, there are still risks associated with actually implementing policies effectively.
So the growth isn't even across the board, and there's no guarantee it'll continue at this pace.
Exactly. So for you listening to this, it's important to remember that these complexities exist.
Yeah, it's not as simple as just having a big and growing middle class.
Right. They need supportive structural reforms and good policies to make sure this demographic dividend turns into real and inclusive economic progress.
Yeah, it's about more than just increasing consumption.
Exactly. It's about creating opportunities and improving the quality of life for these growing populations.
Absolutely. Finding the right balance between using their demographic potential and having good governance and smart investments is key to unlocking the full potential of these emerging economic powerhouses.
Yeah, so the main takeaway for you, our listener, is this. The rising consumer power in India, Vietnam, and Africa is huge, and it's changing fast. These are increasingly important markets that are shaping the global economy, and understanding how they work is becoming more and more crucial.
And this raises a really important question for you to think about. How might businesses and individuals need to change their strategies and perspectives to adapt to a global economy that's increasingly shaped by what people are buying? And the innovative solutions coming from these emerging markets, what new opportunities and what new challenges might come up because of this fundamental shift in global demand? It's a world that's changing rapidly, and these regions are at the center of it all.
Great point. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, this was a good one. Thanks for having me.
And to all our listeners out there, thanks for tuning in to the Deep Dive.
See you next time.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.